folks, welcome to another episode of Think on These Things. What are we doing today? Well, today I'm going to tell you a story. It's a little bit of a story about myself. Some of you know that I'm a very enthusiastic sleeper when it comes to sitting through sermons, much like some of you. And you all know who you are, and I know who you are because I'm looking straight at you during the sermon, and God knows who you are. Maybe no one else does, but I have a long, illustrious history of falling asleep in sermons. I'm one of those people who, if I just sit still for a little bit, I'll just drift off to sleep, even at stoplights, things like that. Kind of dangerous, I know, but I remember when I was a boy, I was sitting in a sermon, and my dad was preaching, and I was dreaming. I was dreaming that I was playing basketball with some of my friends, and I went up to make a basket to lay up, up next to the goal, and I jumped up, and someone got me by the feet, and I started to fall, and I woke up, and as I woke up, I went like this, like boxing someone out while I was sitting there in the pew. Another time, in a different place, wasn't my dad this time, but it was a smaller church. I was sitting in a sermon, I fell asleep, and I was sort of starting to stir and wake up, and I thought to myself, well, it's time to stand up, and everybody is standing, and I didn't make sure and stand up. So I stood up, and I still had my eyes closed, but I started to sort of open them up a little bit. I thought it was at that moment, and then I opened my eyes up only to realize that I was the only person standing up, and everyone was sort of staring at me like, boy, that guy's doing business with God right now. But I was sorely mistaken. Well, there are stories in church history of people falling to sleep. After the Protestant Reformation, they were very serious. The Protestants were very serious about people studying the Word of God together. This was not like some sort of Latin mass that you didn't understand what was going on and you just sort of got some sort of grace because some sort of procedure. No, you were there to learn the Word of God and to study the Word of God. I took it very seriously, and about a generation after the Reformers, the Puritans took it very seriously that people stay awake during the sermons. And I read a story this week from the book I recommended, that first episode. I think it was the very first episode of Think on These Things, but on this day in church Christian history, I read this last week, a story about something that happened in those early days of Protestant Christianity. What they would do in order to keep people awake, they would assign a man to stand in the front of the church, not in the middle while the pastor was preaching, but over to the side while the pastor was preaching. And over to the side, he stood there, and he had a pole. On one end of that pole, there would be something like a feather or a fox's tail or something that he could tickle people with. And on the other end of that pole was something prickly, like a toothpick or a little spike that he could wake people up. And he would just determine what level of sleep people were in, so he could either prick them or tickle them. Well, I read about this story. It happened on June 3rd, 1646. Someone put this in their journal. And excuse the old English. I think you'll be able to understand it, but try to follow along. I'll read slowly so we can understand this, but it's a great story. Allan Bridges hath been chose to wake ye sleepers in meeting. And being much proud of his place, must needs have a foxtail fixed to ye end of a long staff, wherewith he may brush ye faces of them, yet will have naps in time of discourse. Likewise, a sharp thorn, whereby he may prick such as be most sound. On ye last Lord his day, as he strutted about ye meeting house, he did spy Mr. Tomlins sleeping with much comfort, his head kept steady by being in ye corner, and his hand grasping ye rail. And so spying, Allan did quickly thrust his staff behind Dame Ballard, and gave him a grievous prick upon ye hand. Whereupon Mr. Tomlins did spring up much above ye floor, and with terrible force strike his hand against ye wall, and also to ye great wonder of all, profanely exclaim in a loud voice, "Curse ye woodchuck!" He, dreaming it seemed that a woodchuck had seized and bit his hand. But on coming to know where he was, and ye great scandal he had committed, he seemed much abashed, but did not speak. And I think he will not soon again go to sleep in meeting. What a great lesson. And after I read that, I thought to myself, well, maybe we need someone with a pole with a thorn on one end and a foxtail on the other end to keep some of you folks awake. No, I have great mercy on you. But it's interesting to read stories like this because it tells us that people are people are people. And throughout the centuries, we might have this great estimation of the Puritans and the folks then, and there is great reason for that. We do value people who lived in that era. It was a much different era. People studied much more, but people were still people, and they fell asleep in the services. Well, thought that was a good story for story time. Maybe we'll do this again sometime, do another story time. Next week we have something very special. I hope to see you then. God bless.